I'm pleased to announce that the governments have accepted the United States proposal to end the devastating conflict between Israel and Hezbollah.
And that ceasefire announced today by President Biden is expected to begin in 1 hour. A key question, will it facilitate a similar result in Gaza? I'm Ellison Barber in for Gadi Schwartz, and this is Stay Tuned Now. More than a year of fighting at the Israel-Lebanon border could finally come to an end. This is a live look near that border right now. It seems, as you can tell, to be relatively quiet there. However, today's ceasefire announcement came as Israeli ground forces moved deeper into Lebanese territory. Now Biden says the ceasefire deal was designed to be permanent. Lebanon's prime minister says it will bring calm and stability to his country. And while Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu gives the agreement his full support, he also issued this warning.
We are maintaining our full liberty to take military operations. If Hezbollah tries to attack us, if it arms itself, if it rebuilds infrastructure next to the borders, we will attack them.
Meanwhile, Hezbollah has yet to publicly comment on the announced ceasefire. NBC's chief international correspondent, Keir Simmons, has more. Keir?
Well, there's been a lot of effort to persuade in the past few hours, persuade the Israeli people and persuade the world that this is a deal that will stick, that this is a deal that Hezbollah in particular will stick with, particularly Prime Minister Netanyahu addressing a skeptical nation. People, for example, tens of thousands living along the northern border, many of whom are saying they don't believe that Hezbollah won't rise again to attack again. Right-wing members of Prime Minister Netanyahu's government who are openly saying that this deal should not be done now. Prime Minister Netanyahu saying this is a moment where Hezbollah has been put down, defeated for decades, and at the same time that Hezbollah, if it even tries, for example, to build tunnels again, that Israel reserves the right to act, to step in. And then you've heard President Biden talking about this as a permanent cessation of hostilities, is saying that a coalition of countries, particularly, for example, the French, as well as the Lebanese army, will move into that area in southern Lebanon and police this deal. Now, that has been tried before, but this time President Biden says it will work. And this is an important moment for him at the end of his presidency, a chance to say that he achieved something. Peace is possible, he said. Well, the question will be answered in the coming weeks and months whether that's really the case. But where Prime Minister Netanyahu said this separates Gaza from Lebanon so that Israel can now concentrate on Gaza, no peace agreement there at this stage, and where President Biden said this is an opportunity now to build momentum towards a peace deal across the region. Well, all of that will be answered, won't it? And it may well be answered not by President Biden, but by the coming President Trump.
Keir Simmons, thank you. NBC News military analyst and Medal of Honor recipient Colonel Jack Jacobs joins us now for more on this. Colonel, thank you so much for being with us tonight. We are so close to this ceasefire deal. The initial part of it, where all fire between both sides is supposed to stop, ultimately it will be a phased, we're told, withdrawal of Israeli troops who are actually inside of Lebanon, and that will happen within the next 60 days. But what do you make of this? Do you expect this ceasefire to actually go into effect, at least the initial part, in less than an hour? And do you expect it to last?
Well, Ellison, you're right. The initial part is probably almost undoubtedly going to take place. The Israelis are supposed to withdraw south of the border. Hezbollah withdraws north of the Litani River to be replaced by, among others, the Lebanese army and perhaps an international coalition that includes some NATO members, including the French. This will have to be, like all military exercises, will have to be phased. There'll have to be a phased handoff, and it will take some time for it to be affected. Whether or not it holds is something else altogether. We may recall that in 2006 there was a ceasefire after a war of about 5 weeks, and ultimately that collapsed as well. At the end of the day, the independent variable here is Iran. If Iran insists that there will no longer be hostilities, then there won't be any more hostilities, Ellison.
We'll talk more about Iran in a second, but in terms of this ceasefire deal, I'm also curious to get your reaction on something that we heard just a couple of hours ago this evening from an IDF spokesperson posting on X evacuation orders for parts of Lebanon, saying in part, quote, if you're located near Hezbollah facilities and interests against which the IDF will operate in the near future, saying that's the areas where people should evacuate. How does that tie into everything happening with the deal? Because from an outside perspective, it seems almost like a thumb in the eye to civilians to say, OK, we're going to move ahead with this, good faith, we agree to this ceasefire, and then to still say, hey, but in these areas, you should probably go.
Well, there are two things about this. The Israelis have actually struck those areas today on the cusp of the ceasefire. This is principally a warning to Lebanese not to support Hezbollah rather than an alert that they're going to get bombed. What Israel really needs and what the ceasefire really needs is for there to be a lack of support of Hezbollah in this region. But it remains to be seen whether or not that'll be so, Ellison.
Yeah, talk to us a little more about that, because Hezbollah, many people will remember, began this fighting by promising not to stop until Israel ended the war in Gaza. Obviously, that situation has not been resolved, but remind viewers of what has changed here for Hezbollah as an organization and why they would want to agree to this now.
It lost its leader and quite a few people in the chain of command. They've expended a great deal of ammunition and treasure. Iran is probably quite tired of all this, and what they don't want to have is a war between Iran and Israel. Iran doesn't, and Israel doesn't either. There's a lot to recommend this ceasefire from all accounts, but there's plenty of indication that everybody, including Israel, is war weary. Israel needs to regroup. It's expended a great deal of money. It has a lot of people in reserves in the area. It needs to defend its northern border, and it's very difficult to do if you're inside Lebanon, which they have been for quite some time. So there's been a great deal of impetus for a ceasefire. Whether or not it holds, as we said, remains to be seen.
And very quickly, before I let you go, given all of that, do you think Hezbollah can regroup and rebuild, or are they no longer Iran's top proxy in the region?
Oh, they're the top proxy, and they will. They'll be rearmed, refueled. They'll have new leadership, and it's just a matter of time before there might be another conflict. So this is a relatively short-term exercise. Whether or not it burgeons again into another war, that's going to be a function of the actors there, and that includes Iran and Israel.
All right. Colonel Jack Jacobs, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Sure.
The busy Thanksgiving travel rush is officially underway, and it is expected to be a record-breaking one. Let's just hope the weather doesn't get in the way, because right now a major storm is slamming the West Coast before it is expected to move east all the way to New England, dumping heavy rain and snow along the way, which means major airports could see weather-related delays between today and tomorrow. There's already been more than 2,000 delays across the country, and if that wasn't enough, staffing shortages could lead to ground delays at all major airports in and around New York City. Although AAA predicts most people will be driving this week, more than 71 million out of nearly 80 million people who are expected to travel will opt to drive. Another interesting tidbit here, the demand to travel by bus and train, even cruises, has also gone up. NBC's Tom Costello has more.
36 hours before Thanksgiving, and the weather threat is growing. Rain delays on the East Coast and the West, and more on the way. The biggest choke point, Newark airspace, with ground stops and flight delays due to the ongoing shortage of air traffic controllers.
We will use traffic flow management initiatives to deal with any staffing shortages on that particular day in this airspace, and we expect to have some of those shortages.
To address the ongoing shortage, the FAA has been moving control of some Newark airspace to Philly controllers. The FAA continues hiring new controllers, but it'll take years to get fully up to staff. While close calls between planes have dropped 72% this year, the FAA and NTSB are investigating 2 incidents at Boston Logan Monday. An American plane clipping the wing of a Frontier plane and a JetBlue plane under tow clipping a Cape Air flight. No injuries.
So now I have to wait all the way until Wednesday.
United Boeing 737 off your right runway 17.
Meanwhile, Denver International preparing for 3 inches of snow overnight as 3 feet falls in the mountains. The nation's 3rd busiest airport, handling 250,000 passengers a day this week. DIA is also the busiest hub for both United and Southwest. The average Southwest plane flies 8 to 10 flights a day. They've got to move fast. They've got 45 minutes, get all the bags off, put the new bags on, and get back up in the air again.
We're just trying to help people get from point A to point B with the least amount of pain as possible.
Time-lapse video of the megastorm earlier this month that dropped 20 inches on DIA.
Any snow event that we have over an inch, we could have upwards near 150 pieces of equipment just on the airfield.
Meanwhile, American's 24/7 maintenance team at JFK has been working ahead, prepping the fleet for this record-breaking week.
They're in the air all day. They come here at night, and we do what we need to do to get them back in the air and fly safely and reliably for us.
Every airline tells us they've spent months preparing for the here and now. So while the FAA is working on the air traffic control shortage, it has also agreed with the military to open up military airspace along the East Coast, also the Gulf of Mexico. It is hoped that will free up more highways in the sky, allowing this record traffic to move freely through the Thanksgiving rush. One more note, also working with Space Command and pausing rocket launches along the Florida Space Coast so that they're not competing with air traffic space as well. Ellison?
Let's bring in NBC News meteorologist Bill Cairns for more on the weather. So in terms of the next 24, 48 hours, what are things looking like with this coast-to-coast storm?
The next 24 hours, minor. The 24 hours after that, it's going to be difficult in some areas. Now, we're not talking like, paralyzing, flooding, ruining your plans, but we are going to have people that won't be able to get where they want to, especially on Thanksgiving afternoon and evening. We'll get to that in a second. So this is the storm we're talking about. Today, it's been producing snow in the Intermountain West. The worst of it's been around I-70. We've had reports of anywhere 6 to 12 inches of snow. So that's a very difficult drive right now. It's difficult all winter, but, especially after a snowstorm, it's really difficult now. Tomorrow morning, we're going to watch this on I-25. Not a lot of snow, but isolated areas of 2 to 4 inches. I know Denver may get a little bit too, same with Colorado Springs. That storm exits and heads into the middle of the country. Notice, for the Wednesday, very busy travel day, a lot of people driving, flying. East Coast, great. West Coast, great. Southern half of the country, great. Just late in the day, we're going to have some rain breaking out. I don't think there's going to be a lot of cancellations. Maybe some small delays because of, low cloud levels. They call it the ceiling. Chicago, Detroit, and St. Louis, that's about it. I wouldn't be too concerned if you're even traveling through those airports. Then on Thanksgiving Day, it's a different story. Storm strengthens, gets to the East Coast. It's going to try to become almost like a nor'easter type storm by the time it gets up here to Maine. So northern New England, you're going to have to deal with heavy, wet snow. The storm has sped up a little bit. So, yes, we're still going to have rainy weather on the I-95 corridor, but it's really the first half of the day. The second half of the day, it should be getting lighter and exiting. And the same will go in the south, even Atlanta, too. We could have some early showers and thunderstorms, and then that'll be ending. The northern portion of this forecast is where we could have the most issues. As far as the parade goes in New York, this hasn't changed. It doesn't look like it's going to pour the entire time, but rain is likely. Thankfully, the winds will be low enough so all the kids will be able to see all their favorite balloons banana. With the Minion one, too.
Thank goodness for that. I know a lot of people are really looking forward to it. So it should still be going on. Arctic blast, though, we're looking at that hitting possibly next week, right? Walk us through that.
I mean, this is going to come right on the heels of this storm. That's actually, people may think this is like more impactful than what we're dealing with this storm system. So as far as Friday goes, that's where we're going to watch the cold air coming down through the Great Lakes. This blue shows you where it's cooler than normal. Still warm throughout the southern half of the country, but enjoy it while it lasts. So we start tomorrow, say 30 for a high in Sioux Falls. By the time we get to Thanksgiving Day, the high in Minneapolis, only 27. And if the high is that, it means the lows are in the teens. And that cold air sweeps all the way down through the plains. No exception. Everyone is going to feel that cold wind on Thanksgiving Day. By the time we get to the weekend, areas like Fargo for a high 10, 11, 12. We got a football game on Thanksgiving in Green Bay. Temperatures are going to be like in the 20s. It's going to be even colder over the weekend. Chicago, you're not even going to get above freezing for a couple days in a row, which is pretty unusual for late November heading to the beginning of December. And because of that, that's why we're going to see such a big lake effect snow event, Allison, as we head through the weekend. Some areas will get up to 2 to 3 feet of lake effect snow.
All right, time to get our thick socks out if we live in that part of the country. Bill Cairns, thank you so much. We appreciate it. We're going to turn now to President-elect Donald Trump, who is threatening new tariffs on 3 of the United States' top trading partners. But some economists are already predicting that if these tariffs go into effect, it is the American consumer who would be the worse for the wear. News Now anchor Hallie Jackson has the details.
The day after the election, Deer Stag's owner Rick Muscat called his shoe factory in China to stockpile whatever they could send before Inauguration Day and before long-promised Trump tariffs kick in.
We would take everything they could get us to ship before Chinese New Year.
That move, maybe just in time, with President-elect Trump now announcing on his first day in office not just a 10% added tariff on China, a Chinese official today warning no one will win a trade war. But Mr. Trump's also threatening 25% tariffs on anything imported from Mexico and Canada, America's 2 biggest trading partners. Online, Mr. Trump suggesting it's retaliation for the fentanyl entering the U.S., those countries deflecting blame, and referencing migrants coming from Mexico and Canada.
I had a good call with Donald Trump last night again. He talked about some of the challenges that we can work on together.
The Mexican president, for her part, previewing potential retaliatory tariffs. Mr. Trump's proposal could blow up the trade agreement with our neighbors he himself helped negotiate in his first term.
We got it done.
And could be challenged in court. Remember, tariffs are a tax on things other countries send here, and those other countries don't pay the tax directly. It gets passed down to companies instead, and often to you. The U.S. relies on both Canada and Mexico for cars and car parts, from Chevy pickups to Chrysler minivans. So the auto industry now bracing for a blow, including in states like Michigan, which Mr. Trump won. Mexico also supplies more than half the fruits and veggies coming into the U.S., meaning your grocery bill could rise, too. Already, economists predict inflation could tick up nearly 1% if these tariffs go into effect. And that is still an if, since Mr. Trump has used the threat of tariffs as a negotiating tactic before. But if he follows through...
We're a small business, and we can't afford to carry all those costs.
The owners of this Washington pet store worry about having to charge their own customers more.
All right, thank you.
This isn't hypothetical for you. You lived through this in the first Trump term.
And the pandemic, yes. And we did see price increases on the first go-round.
Much of what goes into harnesses, toys, pet beds, and other products comes from overseas, meaning tariffs there could affect shoppers here.
There's a point at which the consumer is going to say, you know, this isn't in my family's budget. We can't do this.
President-elect Trump's incoming border czar, Tom Homan, made his way to Texas today, visiting the southern border near the town of Eagle Pass, Texas, alongside Governor Greg Abbott. Homan talking up the administration's mass deportation promise, yet again calling it a Donald Trump commitment.
What this administration did to the most secure.
There is going to be a mass deportation because we just finished a mass illegal immigration crisis on the border. The nation wants a safe country. We've had enough crime in this country, illegal alien crime. It's time to end it and stop it. President Trump's committed to it.
NBC News correspondent Gadi Venegas joins us now from Eagle Pass, Texas. Gadi, the Texas Land Commissioner posting this on her X account before Homan's visit, offering up more land to the Trump administration for mass deportation facilities. Walk us through this. What is going on here?
Ellison, so that's land that the state of Texas has purchased and is now offering to the federal government to work with this mass deportation. We don't know how this would happen, but essentially they're saying, look, if you need a place to build a detention facility, you can use this land that the state has purchased. Now, when you think of what a mass deportation would look like, the federal government would not be able to just detain individuals in different parts of the country, put them on planes or vehicles and deport them to Mexico or other countries individually, right? The logistics would be quite complicated. It would require some type of facility where we would think they would send individuals and then from there organize what these deportations would look like. So we think that's what the state of Texas would be offering. But we don't know specifics about how these mass deportations would happen. What we know from what Homan said today is that they would be targeting individuals that have arrived in the U.S. seeking asylum and have been denied that asylum by the immigration judges. But this is all very complicated, Ellison, because when we think of the masses, that surge of migrants that arrived at the U.S.-Mexico border that were allowed to remain in the U.S. under this humanitarian parole, a lot of these individuals, they are in the U.S. waiting for a court date, many of them waiting for a court date in 2025 or even 2026. So they haven't even seen an immigration judge. And what we're hearing from Homan is that they want to focus on those that already went to their immigration hearing and were denied that asylum case. And we don't know the numbers of how many individuals are in the country that have been denied that request that would then be targeted as part of these mass deportations, Allison.
So, God, talk to us about what the situation is like in Texas right now in terms of what kind of facilities do they have at this moment, and are they considered overcrowded?
Well, when you think of what the federal government has when it comes to migrants that enter the country illegally, so they have detention facilities, right, that immigration uses. This is where a lot of individuals that are undocumented will be detained for months, some of them waiting for to be deported, others to be released into the country. So these exist. Now, at one point, we reported the crowded facilities in Texas and other places around the border. These were Customs and Border Protection facilities that were used for processing. These were used when migrants arrived in the country, they requested asylum. They would go through these centers, be processed, and then be released in the U.S. waiting for an immigration date. These centers are no longer crowded the way they were in the past, but we don't have a specific facility that would serve for the purpose of these mass deportations. So it's hard to know what the numbers are like specifically on a day-to-day basis. What we know is that we no longer have a migrant surge of individuals arriving at the U.S.-Mexico border. We have seen individuals arrive in smaller groups. Just about an hour ago, we saw a small group of people arrive here, 3 adults, and it looked like 3 minors were with them, but just small groups. We no longer have that overcrowded facilities and the large groups arriving at the border like we did the last few years, Allison.
Excellent reporting. Guad Venegas from Eagle Pass, Texas. Thank you. We appreciate it. And don't go anywhere, because we are just getting started. Up next, another holiday travel worry, and we're not talking about traffic. The theft ring targeting airport parking lots. What you can do to protect your car and valuables. Plus, the need for speed. F1's fast-growing American fan base is soon going to have a chance to root for a home team. What one racing legend saying about his plans to get to victory lane. And later this hour, the future of childcare. As costs grow and options dwindle, a program in one state is working to solve the crisis by helping turn homes into safe places to learn. That's tonight's Future of Everything.
If it wasn't for Natalie, none of this would happen. To be able to help kids and parents and stuff like that, that's an awesome feeling.
Welcome back. Here are some of the other headlines we're watching tonight. An FBI agent was arrested on sexual assault charges in Maryland. Eduardo Vadiva is accused of raping 2 women. They both allege he lured them to his tattoo studio. Investigators believe there could be more victims. This same agent was charged with attempted murder back in 2020, but later acquitted. A defiant Rudy Giuliani was in court today saying he cannot pay his own bills. Giuliani lashed out at the judge, who's making him pay up to the tune of over $100 million. Remember, that is after he failed to turn over his assets to the former Georgia election workers he was convicted of defaming. Federal officials are on the hunt for two people who defaced some ancient petroglyphs. The alleged vandalism happened near Glen Canyon in Utah. You can see the two here, where they are carving into a canyon wall. The area features unique formations and sandstone walls. Officials are offering a $1,000 reward for information leading to an arrest. The man behind two bombings in San Francisco more than 20 years ago was caught in Wales today and now faces extradition to the United States. Daniel Andres Santiago, now 46, was linked to two bombings in 2003, which the FBI believes targeted firms connected to animal testing labs. No one was hurt in those blasts. In 2009, Mr. Santiago became the first domestic terrorism suspect to be added to the FBI's most wanted list. And look at these crazy images from Marina, California. A gas station canopy somehow collapsed, crushing two cars underneath it. Luckily, no one was hurt and the gas has been turned off. Investigators are now trying to figure out how it all happened. The fire department says strong winds were reported in the area at the time of the collapse. Now to a health alert where the Biden administration is expected to propose that obesity drugs can be covered by Medicare and Medicaid. It's a move that would expand access to weight loss drugs like Wegovy and Ozempic. Here's NBC's Stephanie Gosk.
Tonight, a proposal that could dramatically change the battle against obesity. The Biden administration looking to expand Medicaid and Medicare coverage to include weight loss medications.
How big a deal is this potentially for your patients?
Oh, my goodness. This would be wonderful.
For now, Medicaid and Medicare only cover the popular drugs, including Ozempic, if patients are diabetic or have certain obesity-related conditions. People struggling with obesity alone are forced to pay out of pocket at roughly $1,000 a month. Dr. Lori DiMattia is an obesity specialist.
It's heartbreaking to have one specific treatment option be so effective and yet so expensive. It keeps it out of reach for many, many people.
The HHS says 7.4 million beneficiaries would qualify at a cost of $36 billion over the next decade. But there are obstacles. The Congressional Budget Office recently reported that a plan like this would cost billions more to Medicare than the administration projects. There is also a mandatory 60-day public comment period before enacting a new rule, leaving the ultimate decision up to the next administration. President-elect Trump's choice to run Medicare and Medicaid, Dr. Mehmet Oz, has publicly supported the use of weight loss drugs. But Robert Kennedy Jr., Mr. Trump's pick to head HHS, has argued lifestyle changes are the key to tackling obesity.
They're counting on selling it to Americans because we're so stupid and so addicted to drugs.
Dr. DiMattia recommends a combination of lifestyle changes and medication.
There's people who don't believe or agree that that is a disease, and yet it impacts over 150 other different illnesses.
That was Stephanie Gosk reporting. And for those of you thinking of storing your car at the airport this holiday weekend, you might want to think again. A criminal ring of thieves is reportedly stealing cars at airports across this country. NBC's Emily Ikeda has this report.
Adding to the stress of holiday travel, tonight new warnings over thieves targeting cars parked at airports across the country. At the world's busiest airport, more than 300 cars have been stolen this year, according to Atlanta police, 3 times as many as last year.
It is frustrating. We're not the only airport that is experiencing this increase in auto thefts. We are taking steps to prevent this.
There's something very off.
It happened to Atlanta resident Wes Clark. When he was traveling overseas last month, his BMW was taken.
I parked intentionally right by a camera, so super surprised when the car was gone.
In Texas, police say they recently arrested the leader of a Cuban auto theft group that targets airports in multiple states, accused of stealing nearly $5 million worth of cars from Dallas-Fort Worth alone, using technology to reprogram key fobs, according to court documents.
If they see something, they need to say something.
Greg Erie oversees security at major airports in the New York City area and says auto theft has progressively become an organized crime issue nationwide.
They're doing it for the increasingly high resale value on these vehicles and the fact that they can get them out of the country and sell them overseas.
As tens of thousands park at airport lots, agencies like Port Authority now ramping up security, increasing police patrols, and embracing technology like license plate readers. So what can you do to protect your car? Experts say make sure there are no valuables in sight. And on top of locking your vehicle, consider additional security measures like a tracking system or a steering wheel lock to help drive thieves away this holiday season. Emily Ikeda, NBC News, Newark, New Jersey.
Coming up, the most famous rap beef right now, going from the studio possibly to the courtroom. What's behind Drake's defamation claims and who he's pointing the finger at. But first, you gotta see this. A baby Bambi was born earlier this month in Argentina. Meet Linga, a rare poodoo fawn who is giving conservationists hope for studying these tiny, mysterious, adorable little deer. Poodoos are one of the smallest deer species in the world, growing up to be just 20 inches tall. Little Linga's been busy exploring the biopark, rocking those white spots that make him a pro at hiding in plain sight. Talk about a cuteness overload. We'll be right back. Welcome back. With Thanksgiving right around the corner, it is almost time for those delicious side dishes and Thanksgiving festivities. Some of you might be waking up early for a local turkey trot, while others, I'm sure, will be on the couch getting ready for some high-stakes football. Believe it or not, there's some data behind those decisions, and who better than to break down the numbers behind Thanksgiving than NBC's business and data correspondent, Brian Chung. Hey, Brian.
Hey there, well, happy almost Thanksgiving to you. I've got a number of stats to ring in this Thursday's big meal, starting off with how much that meal is going to cost. $58 is the average cost of a meal for 10 this year, according to the American Farm Bureau. And before people say, wait a minute, how could it be that cheap? Let me walk you through what their calculus is. $25.67 is the cost of a 16-pound turkey, which they say is down 6% from this time last year. Now, that factors into a meal that they say will only include about a few vegetables, 10 dinner rolls, a pie, no alcohol. So that's the reason why that might be a little bit lower than perhaps you might be spending for this holiday. But broadly speaking, again, it's cheaper than this time last year, which is certainly welcome news by about 5%. Now, when it comes to travel, a 91% increase in airfare for the Thanksgiving weekend. It's extremely expensive to travel for this weekend. That's why a lot of people are traveling by car, 71 million, according to AAA. Now, some other stats for you as well when it comes to just preferences. 56% of people, they prefer side dishes to turkey. They say, you know what? I'm all right with that meat. Al Roker says it's a vessel for the gravy, which I agree with. 82 million cans of cranberry sauce were sold by Ocean Spray, which, by the way, if you line them all the way up, you can get from Boston to Salt Lake City. Super cool stat there. 45 states prefer stuffing as their favorite side dish. The other 5 states say mashed potatoes. Fun fact there. And then 57% prefer pumpkin pie to apple pie. The majority is wrong in that case. Apple pie, in my opinion, certainly better. Now, some other stats here. 23% say Thanksgiving is their favorite day of the year. 36% say Christmas, which makes Thanksgiving the second most cited favorite day of the year. 34 million people will watch football. 1 million people run a turkey trot just to burn off those calories in the aftermath of the dinner. And 45% will attend a Friendsgiving, especially those that aren't able to travel. And some final stats here I'll just kind of wrap up with. 98 years of the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, iconic here in New York City. By the way, we have that over here on NBC and on Peacock. 60 feet will be the height of the tallest balloon. That is Minnie Mouse. There will be 32 balloons and 22 floats with 200 pounds of confetti falling onto the parade route, which, by the way, is 2.5 miles. But the final stat that I'll leave you with, 165 degrees. That's the temperature to cook your turkey. Back to you.
Brian Chung, thank you for that. Turning now to the world of Formula One racing in a big, big moment over the weekend.
The Dutch driver will retain his crown. Max Verstappen is a 4-time Formula One world champion.
F1 superstar Max Verstappen crowned champion in Las Vegas, one of 3 F1 races hosted in the United States. But when it comes to drivers, it's been decades since we've seen an American on the podium. But could that soon be changing? That's the big question after Formula One has agreed to General Motors and Cadillac joining as the newest F1 teams in 2026. The man behind the deal, racing icon Mario Andretti, who had this to say to NBC News about the future of the sport in the United States.
And so there's a lot of national pride that goes with it. And, you know, we have 3 races like no other country on the planet has. and to have your own team playing, just like when you have our own performance in the Olympics. The fans will expect a lot of us, and we understand that. We expect a lot of ourselves, from ourselves.
NBC correspondent and F1 superfan Sahil Kapoor joins us now. He has traded in his politics hat for that exclusive interview with Mario Andretti. Sahil, always good to have you, especially on a topic like this, because I know very little about it, but it looks cool. So bring us up to speed here with races already in Vegas, Austin, and Miami. Where does this take F1 in the United States? And explain to us why this is considered to be such a big deal.
Hey, Ellison. Well, it's a big deal for a number of reasons. Starting with, for the first time, we're going to have a legendary American racing team with Andretti building an F1 car at the same time that they're going to be powered by GM, which is an American auto giant, making the engine and the power unit. Now, this is really important for the U.S. market because while F1 is one of the fastest growing sports in the United States, there is still one missing ingredient, which is that we don't have a lot to root for on the home front. The only American team on the grid right now is Haas F1. It's not well known. It conducts a lot of its operations in Europe. It uses a European engine, and it has not had success. The only American driver in the last decade and a half was Logan Sargent, who was underperforming so much he was dropped by his Williams team earlier this year in the middle of the season. The promise of this new Cadillac-branded F1 team is that it can finally bring success where, in a way that the United States hasn't seen in F1 since Mario Andretti, his 1978 championship. That was the last time the Star Spangled Banner was playing on a podium for an American driver. Part of what he wants here is to deliver something that's good for F1 in the U.S., which makes it good for the sport everywhere, given that this is the priority market.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, it sounds like this is personal for Mario Andretti as well, since that was the last time there was an American on the podium, was him many decades ago. What did he say to you about his vision for this new team?
Yeah, well, firstly, Mario Andretti and his racing dynasty family have been trying to get on the grid for a long time. They've been in this lengthy and very bitter at times standoff with Formula One about how to do it. But regardless, they finally broke the impasse. This is going to be branded as Cadillac, not an Andretti team, even though Andretti is building the race car. So it is still a partnership. Now, what Mario Andretti told me, a couple of things. For the first few years, he expects to use a Ferrari engine. He's a former Ferrari driver. He has connections that run deep in that organization. Then by 2028, they expect GM and Cadillac to build their original works power unit. And they will have two drivers. Every team in Formula One has two drivers on the grid. Take a listen to what Mario Andretti told me about his vision for those two drivers.
I think there are more drivers available than teams at the moment. It seems like 10 teams seems a lot, but there are a lot more drivers, a lot more talent out there. And, from our standpoint, I think the play at the beginning would be to have one experienced driver, nationality doesn't matter, but one experienced driver, and then a young American talent.
Now, for that young American talent, who are the candidates? He was pretty mum about it, but he did confirm that Colton Herta, the IndyCar driver who's racing for Andretti Global, is going to be one of the candidates. Another one, Jack Crawford, has been floated by some F1 insiders as a young American driver currently with the Aston Martin program. For the others, I was in the Las Vegas Grand Prix at the paddock covering this race for us, Ellison, and I talked to some more experienced drivers like Valtteri Bottas, the outgoing Sauber driver, who won 10 races while he was racing alongside Lewis Hamilton at Mercedes. He told me he might be interested in a Cadillac F1 seat. And I also spoke to some test and reserve drivers who were with existing teams who sounded like they would be interested in this. I don't want to name names because I don't want to get them in trouble with their teams, but suffice it to say, there will be a lot of interest in Cadillac F1.
Really interesting stuff. Sahil Kapoor, our unofficial F1 expert here at NBC News. Thank you.
Thank you.
And still ahead, Russia launching a record onslaught against Ukraine. Our Richard Engel is on the ground in Kyiv, taking us inside that escalation. Welcome back. Let's take a quick look around the world. 4 more bodies have been recovered after a tourist boat capsized off Egypt's Red Sea coast, with 7 people still missing. The boat sank Monday after being struck by high waves during rough weather. 33 survivors have been rescued, including tourists from Belgium, Switzerland, and Finland. In Laos, 8 people have been arrested, including staff and management of the Nana Backpacker Hostel, after 6 tourists died from drinking alcohol allegedly tainted with methanol. Numerous governments are warning tourists to avoid local spirits as that investigation continues. Hundreds have been arrested in Pakistan's capital, Islamabad, after supporters of jailed ex-Prime Minister Imran Khan stormed the city demanding his release. At least 6 people were killed as protesters clashed with security forces while trying to breach government buildings. Google and Meta, meanwhile, say Australia should delay its bill banning social media for kids under 16, calling for an age verification trial first. Other tech giants have also raised their concerns about the bill. TikTok argues the bill lacks clarity, while X warns it could harm children's human rights, including free speech. The bill is likely to pass Australia's government this week, but would not become law for another year. We're going to turn now to the war in Ukraine, where overnight Russia launched more than 180 drones across that country, according to officials, damaging the power grid and some homes. Ukraine says it is the highest number of drones Russia's launched in a single attack, and it seems to suggest momentum is on Russia's side at this pivotal time in the war. NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel has this report from Kyiv.
Ukrainian and NATO officials today are holding emergency meetings after Russia has quite dramatically intensified its attacks, trying, it seems, to secure the strongest position possible before the inauguration of President-elect Trump, who says that he's going to end the war. Russia assumes if the war does end, it wants to have the most territory in its hands as possible, and so does Ukraine. But at the moment, it is Russia that has the momentum. According to the Ukrainian Air Force, Russia fired 188 drones at Ukraine just overnight. That is a record number for a short period of time. Russia has been intensifying over the last several days, which is why NATO and Ukraine are trying to coordinate strategy. The UK and France have joined the United States in allowing Ukraine to fire their weapon systems into Russia. Ukraine wants to see more of this, but there is a feeling here that time is not working in Ukraine's favor, that President Trump is going to come on January 20th. He says he's going to freeze the conflict. And at this moment, Ukraine is losing territory. They're losing it fastest in the Kursk region. That is the part of Russia that Ukraine captured in August. It was a large territory that Ukraine was able to occupy in a surprise attack. But over the last several weeks, they have lost, according to Ukrainian intelligence, about 40% of that territory.
In tonight's Future of Everything, we are talking about the future of childcare. Finding someone to take care of young children can sometimes be stressful. And if you can find it, it doesn't always come cheap. Across the U.S., more than half of parents with kids ages 5 to 11 do not have any formal childcare arrangements. Cost, they say, is a major factor. Brand new data from the Labor Department crunched the numbers, and based on 2022 costs, families spent anywhere from $6,000 to $15,000 for childcare. That is just a few $100 more than that year's median rent. Now, a program in Alabama is looking to provide solutions to this and another crisis. NBC's Maya Eaglin is here to tell us more. Hey, Maya.
Hey, Ellison, this new program called 3x3 has a really innovative approach to funding. It basically finds folks who are interested in creating their own at-home daycare and matches them with government grant funding that completely covers the startup costs for them. It's helping solve 2 issues in the state. 1, getting women back into the workforce, and 2, helping aid in the child care shortage. Take a look.
I got some cheese. I got some cheese.
Like many places around the country, in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, affordable and high-quality childcare options are limited.
Alabama has a large workforce and a large workforce need at the same time, and we know that childcare is one of those things that is often a barrier.
Holly Glasgow runs 3x3 Childcare, a program run out of Sheldon State Community College meant to increase the number of at-home daycare options in her community. There are fewer than 50 licensed childcare centers in Tuscaloosa County, according to the state. And Glasgow says she estimates that there are about 3,000 childcare spots available for the more than 12,000 kids under 5. Traditional daycare centers like this one allow families flexible and affordable options for childcare. But this program in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, is bringing the daycare model to homes like this one. Athena, what are you making?
Cookies.
Cookies, yum. The 3x3 program matches government grants and industry leaders with people who want to start an at-home daycare. What are the upfront costs for people who want to open one in their home?
That's the best part. At the very least, we're spending about $1,000 on supplies and materials. At the most, it could be as much as $5,000. That otherwise they would have to find out of pocket.
Then comes lots of training.
Typically somewhere around 100 hours of training. And then we are visiting their homes. We do that often.
This is my kitchen area.
Fruits and vegetables and pots and pans.
Holly is helping Angie Williams with the finishing touches on her at-home daycare. Her final state inspection is expected to happen in a few weeks.
Do they have hardwired smoke detectors? Do they need carbon monoxide monitors, outlet covers, fire extinguishers, those kinds of things?
In total, the program has helped set up 19 at-home daycares, each with 3 to 6 kids. The entrepreneurs completely keeping all their profits.
Hi. Hey, how you doing?
This is your daycare.
It is. This is Mama B's Rising Stars.
And your house.
And my house.
Lynette Washington is one of the business owners in the first cohort of the program.
If it wasn't for Miss Holly, none of this would happen. To be able to help kids and parents and stuff like that, that's an awesome feeling.
Why is it so important for kids 0 to 4 to have quality childcare?
Their language, literacy, math skills. We set the foundation for all of that that's so important for the rest of their lives. And we know that if we do this well, kids will be more likely to go on to higher education and to be more productive and successful.
Glasgow says she has big dreams for 3x3.
I don't think Alabama is where we will stop. I do think going forward we'll be able to provide a model for other states.
Investing in tomorrow's future today. Now, Holly told me there have been some challenges with creating these new businesses, like restrictions for folks who live in apartments, and sometimes the timeline for when these centers open can be a little long because different officials might not be familiar with this new process. Still, Holly says she's really eager for the rest of the country to learn from the model. Ellison?
Interesting stuff. Maya Eaglin, thank you. And thank you at home for watching. That does it for us tonight. I'm Ellison Barber. We'll see you tomorrow. But until then, stay tuned now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.